Today I'd like to present on what is happening to our coastal fisheries, why this matters, and how we are working together to realise the benefits of supporting coastal fisheries. I say we because I'm not presenting today just on behalf of the Association of Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authorities, but on behalf of a consortium who have been working collaboratively together. I have the task of representing their work today properly. Luckily, I have some nice images to help me on my way. Thank you very much to Coastal Futures for inviting me and providing me with this opportunity to present this work of some brilliant young researchers who are in this audience. So, in government, policy attention is often, understandably, focused on the big debates, how to implement effective management to secure sustainable stocks whilst maintaining healthy marine environments, ensuring fair and reasonable access and trade with our neighbouring countries. All of this is in the news quite often, or too often perhaps, more recently. It's about, as we've heard, protecting and securing a space for our industry in an ever-busy marine environment. Behind these headlines, however, a quieter story has been unravelling, which has not had the headline attention that I feel it needs. And this is the nature and consequence of the decline of our inshore fishing fleet. People working in fisheries have long commented on a sense of loss of fishing boats across our harbours, and having worked in the industry for nearly 25 years, I can personally attest to the massive reduction that we're seeing in our coastal fisheries. Working with Seafish and led by Newcastle University, we now have clear evidence that shows the significant decline in our fishing fleet that is happening across the whole of the UK. Our fishing fleet is declining, and it is declining rapidly. In just 4 years, between 2018 and 2022, there was a 17% reduction in the number of vessels. This map shows the number of vessels by region. The larger the circle, the larger number of the vessels. The graduated colour shows the change in vessel numbers, where green, the one green, shows an increase, and where red shows the most accentuated loss. Parts of the southeast, northeast, northwest England and Wales are facing higher rates of loss in the fishing fleets relative to other parts of the UK. A closer look at the nature and extent shows a regional disparity, but also a sectoral disparity. The under 10 metre sector, which makes up, as we've heard, 75% of the inshore of the fleet, is experiencing accentuated declines relative to the larger vessels. This also means that rural areas where 30% of the under 10 metre fleet land their catch are being hit harder, intensifying coastal and rural inequalities. Under 10 metre boats saw a 43.6% reduction in their days at sea and a 47% decrease in employment over this period. I told you there'd be nice pictures. And this matters. This really matters. Evidence collected by researchers in the audience today demonstrates that people really care. We know people care about our coastal fisheries. As we've heard, it brings a sense of identity, a sense of place, valuable employment, and it is traditionally associated with many of our coastal areas. Research from Cromer, Whitby and North Shields, in a survey, 90% of people said who had interacted with the local industry said that their interactions had positively impacted their day. I'm not able to do all of this research justice in the 10 minutes that I've been given, so I hope that I'm able to give a flavour of the extent of the work. But what I want to move on to now is, so what? What are we doing about it? How are we trying to work together to address these issues? And I mean that, together, collectively. And I want to also present this as a consortium of work, but we are an open consortium. We're forming stages and we're very open to further and wider participation. So in autumn 2024, we held 2 workshops, one in Whitby and one in Hull. The work was kindly sponsored by Esme Fairburn, so thank you very much. That facilitated, in particular, the 55 active fishermen who were engaged in the programs. Why did we meet? Well, we wanted to improve our understanding of the drivers of decline. We wanted to drill down into the regions and hear from the fishermen's representatives and the IFCAs and the MMO in those areas. We wanted to provide a platform for the under 10-metre skippers to share their experiences of the decline and discuss the variable options to mitigate the decline in the fleet. We wanted to shine a light on the importance of maintaining livelihoods in sustainable fisheries. The brilliant pictures that I have in the next several slides are produced by Carolyn Chappell, who has attempted, and I think brilliantly well, to reflect the wonderful diversity of our conversations and discussions and establishing our priorities. She does a much better job than I have done in explaining the nuances and complexities of those outcomes that we see. The 7 priorities that now follow include being heard. The under 10-metre fleet is poorly represented very often because it's disparate, it's spread out, it's unable often to have its voice heard. Priority 1 is the inshore fleet to be heard. Effective regulation of all sea users to ensure, as particularly I think Mike's presentation illustrated, that fishing is considered in the development and consent process. And that's difficult. If we've heard they're disparate and spread out, it's very difficult to reach into these communities. We must do better at that. There is also a very strong call to secure the 6 to 12 mile limits. I've been given my 3-minute warning, and I knew I'd run out of time, so I will let the pictures do most of the talking. We need to ensure that the health and safety regulations are appropriate, and we need to ensure that the inshore fleet has the ability to diversify and access grants for that purpose. We heard significant concerns, as Mike has again already pointed out, that the routes into fishing are few now, and we need to increase pathways to enable next generation to come into that fleet. We need also greater recognition for the valuable contribution that our inshore fleet plays and our fishing fleet generally. And I don't wish to be divisive in this. This is not about the division, but it's to reflect the real needs and concerns of this industry. We need greater recognition. To that end, I'm really pleased to have the ability to host at this wonderful conference the Pride of the Seas exhibition, which is in the foyer. If you haven't seen it, I really thoroughly recommend it, which is an attempt, and we tour with this to show off some of the wonderful characters involved in our inshore fleet. This will be touring England over the next year or so. And wonderfully put together by Sarah Caldard. I couldn't finish this talk without speaking to Sarah's wonderful work. And also, Ainsley and Phoebe, thank you very much for pulling this together. So, to come to the question, how will future fishing be balanced with restoration? Well, good fisheries management works. FMPs need to secure the stock benefits for small-scale fishers, and in order to do so, the small-scale fishers' voices need to be heard, and they need to be given the opportunity to benefit from the effective management of stocks. I would argue, because I should, that we have good inshore fisheries management, but very often many of the stocks, that management is not replicated offshore. We need to ensure equitability and a fair value flow in our management system. We need to consider the consequences of our decisions in terms of their social and economic implications. In particular, as we've heard throughout this conference, the challenge that we have around marine licensing. And as I say, particularly the small-scale fleet is vulnerable. I would argue that IVMS needs to have happened yesterday, and it was presented as an enforcement tool, but instead it needs to be out there to show the value of our coastal areas for inshore fishing. 12 seconds, next steps. Meeting of a regional fisheries, groups of fishermen coming together next week in London to build on this consortium. We have a parliamentary event in March where we're inviting parliamentarians to hear about this research. We plan to engage in England over the summer in further workshops with our fisheries participants, and in autumn we will be holding a conference at Newcastle University to further identify opportunities to collaborate with a much wider audience. Please do get involved in that if you're able to. This work is presented on the Newcastle University National Innovation Centre for Rural Enterprise website. All of this information is to be found on there. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. Thank you.